I know I've talked about this before, but now we have another example of online fake hype not translating to box office success. It's almost as if fanboys on social media don't represent the pulse of general audiences. But the real question is, why didn't this film connect with a larger audience? Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
On its opening weekend, the first film from DC's Scarlet Speedster debuted with an underwhelming $55 million. For reference, it made barely half as much as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania did in its domestic opening weekend, and that film was considered a financial disappointment when it ended its theatrical run. For further context, experts are predicting that The Flash will end its worldwide box office run under the $350 million mark, which just so happens to be less than Black Adam, The Eternals, Black Widow, and the Uncharted movie. It's believed that Warner Brothers will lose around $300 million on this movie as a result of the underwhelming response from fans. So needless to say, Flash has been placed amongst some unflattering company as it pertains to lackluster box office performances for comic book movies. But the real question is, why did it go down like this? I mean, everyone on Twitter was calling it one of the best comic book movies ever made prior to its release. The new head of DC on film, James Gunn, even said that it's one of the best films he's ever seen, period.
I don't believe you.
Which really doesn't say much for his taste in film, as well as the long-term success of DC moving forward. But with this much praise on social media, surely it would propel this film into box office success, right? Well, not exactly, because you see, there's a lot of fanboying and unrealistic hype in the digital world. In the real world, however, audiences show up for movies with legit earned positive word of mouth. To which this movie had absolutely none of, by the way. Not even the inclusion of fan favorite Batman Michael Keaton could get audiences interested in this train wreck of a movie. If you want proof of how differently people look at movies in the real world compared to how they look at them on social media, look no further than this Twitter account that said, "It's 2023 and The Flash just teamed up with 1989's Batman. And you didn't find that shit cool?" Is that not the perfect representation of how little some people require to be satisfied by their entertainment? No mention of things like story or acting or writing. It's just, we have these two characters meeting for the first time, so why aren't you more excited? Well, Heroes Unbound, the reason for that is that some of us have standards. Some of us believe that these two characters deserve a little bit better than just being featured in Nostalgia Bait the movie.
Ultimately, if you're going to have lasting change in anything, you're really talking about just raising your standards.
And I would venture to guess that some people are starting to see through the nostalgia bait trick at this point, simply because they've been burnt by it so many times before. But that's not stopping apologists for blaming everyone for the Flash's failure other than the people they should be blaming. I saw people blaming possible audience members who boycotted this film based on Ezra Miller's off-screen shenanigans. And while I'm sure some people were turned off by those stories, I don't think as many people were informed about that situation as some may think. Because I know for a fact there are moviegoers who don't spend every waking moment of their life on social media, so their knowledge of the subject may have been minimal.
Talk to you soon, okay? Bye!
I've seen people blaming Zack Snyder, who really hasn't even been involved with DC for some time now. One person even said the reason Flash flopped was because BVS and Suicide Squad did irreparable damage to the DC brand in the public eye. Bullshit. To which some other users kindly pointed out that both Wonder Woman and Aquaman performed exceptionally well after the release of those pesky Snyder movies that apparently ruined everything. And you could even throw Joker into the mix as well, which was a critically acclaimed, award-winning box office success that was, yes, under the DC brand. Also, if you look at the numbers, Zack Snyder's two DC films that were released in theaters, that being BVS and Man of Steel, outperformed the combined domestic totals of Shazam, Shazam 2, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, Black Adam, and yes, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. And what that tells me is that maybe more people were interested in his take on the characters than some would have you believe.
You lose! Good day, sir!
Maybe some people enjoyed his films as an alternative to the MCU, and aren't as into films like The Flash that are attempting to replicate the MCU's tone and feel. The truth is that a lot of people ask for DC movies to be a bit more lighthearted, yet every time they do that, general audiences don't seem to respond to those movies. Meanwhile, movies like Joker, The Batman, The Dark Knight trilogy, and yes, even BVS and Man of Steel all performed reasonably well at the box office.
Get what you f***ing deserve!
I've even seen people blaming James Gunn for this disaster. And as much as I'd like to pile on to those accusations, especially after James Gunn admitted that he gave notes on this film to improve it, and the fact that he announced his new DCU slate ahead of the release of this film, basically making it obsolete in the eyes of people who value things like shared universes. But I'm not blaming James Gunn either, believe it or not. He's simply doing the job he was hired to do, regardless of the fact of whether or not he is actually qualified to do so. To me, all of DC's recent failures, everything from Black Adam to Shazam 2 to The Flash, fall squarely at the feet of WB.
Goddamn right, that's the only way I work, Cap.
You see, we know that they have the ability to create a product that resonates with people because we've seen them do it already. But rather than embrace who these characters are and embrace the more mature stories that suit them, what they want is an MCU carbon copy, which is exactly why they hired someone like James Gunn, who is basically Mr. MCU.
That makes sense.
Now, I'll be the first one to admit that a character like The Flash is better suited for a lighter tone, but a lighter tone shouldn't come at the expense of the integrity of your character. A lighter tone doesn't necessarily mean that your movie has to play out like a goofball comedy. A lighter tone doesn't mean that you have to embrace the MCU's philosophy of bringing characters to life with bad CGI. Something that the Flash director said recently was done on purpose, by the way, for creative effect. And what quite possibly might be one of the most ridiculous explanations for such a thing that I've ever heard.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
But that's WB and the people that they hire now. Completely clueless and incapable of delivering a quality product on a consistent basis. The Flash plays out like a mess of a movie because that's what it is. It's not one person's creative vision brought to life. It's filmmaking by committee, another aspect of the MCU template that they decided to borrow from. Some people are crying about a hate campaign against this movie that apparently is being manufactured by people who didn't even watch it.
Sure, Jan.
Conveniently leaving out the fact that there's a reason these people didn't watch it, that being they didn't give them a reason to want to watch it. Well, I did see the film, and a lot of other people did as well, and believe it or not, I didn't go into this movie wanting to hate it. If I make videos prior to watching something in its entirety, where I'm reacting to trailers or news articles in a very critical way, I'm entitled to do so, and it's WB's job to create a product that convinces me otherwise. It's WB's job to market this movie in a way that makes me look past my skepticism.
Put some effort into it!
And they just didn't do that, and no amount of deflection is going to change that. The truth is that criticism is not hate. Criticism is a very healthy form of expression when it is presented properly. It creates balance in the conversation by presenting different perspectives. Bottom line, if The Flash offered a more unique perspective on the comic book movie genre, then I think people would have responded to it accordingly. Instead, it looked and felt exactly like everything else we've been getting recently, and I think audiences saw through that.
Not up in here! Not up in here!
WB needs to take responsibility and recognize that real change is necessary if you want better results. Offer people something unique that will combat the threat of superhero fatigue instead of offering something that reinforces it.
Y'all be cool. Nah.